There are too many people on the planet. We are running out of food, out of land, out of water. This is the population scientists expect. It's going to fall off a cliff. In 1963, the global fertility rate peaked. Women were having approximately 5 children each. Since then, it has been steadily declining, and now women have an average of 2 children each. That has actually declined even in the last year, dropping from 2.4 to 2.2. You see? It's going down. At best, it's leveling off. But in some countries, it's been more significant. For example, in South Korea, it went from an average of 6 children per woman to 1. By 2050, over 3/4 of countries will have fertility rates below replacement. By 2100, it's expected that 98% of countries will have a birth rate lower than replacement. The overpopulation narrative is one of the West's most dangerous myths because it shifts the attention away from this hoarding and puts the onus back on you, the human being. In 2024, billionaire wealth grew by an unprecedented $2 trillion. In 1 year, they got an extra $2 trillion. During the pandemic and the subsequent cost of living crisis, 63% of all new wealth was captured by the richest 1%. Hunger is political. Food production is abundant. Even with our incredibly inefficient farming methods, the world is producing enough food to feed 10 billion people. Easy. But 1/3 of that yield that's being taken from the earth is wasted. 800 million people are starving and malnourished, not because we do not have enough food, but because hunger is policy. It is because of war and poverty. The richest 1% are responsible for more greenhouse emissions than the bottom 66% combined. 1% with his private jet versus the rest of us. And they have been telling you since the 15th century that poverty is a moral failure and that you are the problem. Because if you blame each other, if you blame population increase or immigrants, you aren't questioning capitalism. You aren't asking questions about the global resource theft. It's propaganda. It is elegant, long-lasting propaganda. Rich countries now have a crisis of an aging population. Birth rates are falling off a cliff, but rich white people are living longer. Who's paying for all of these pensions? Elon Musk is worth $350 billion. Bernard Arnault has $192 billion. Jeffrey Bezos, my personal nemesis. What's with the clock tower, Jeff? $209 billion. The naive Bill Gates, the creator of the PowerPoint, $164 billion. And this guy, who doesn't want you to know his name, it's Larry Ellison. He owns the company that hoards all your data, and he is worth $197 billion. Since Mr. Ellison loves publicity so much, let's keep him here while we talk about the cost of a billionaire. His carbon footprint is 100,000 times larger than the average person's. According to a 2003 Oxfam report and the Stockholm Environmental Institute, the average billionaire emits 3 million tons of CO2 in 1 year. The average person emits 5 tons. Even with all your Ryanair flights to Portugal, there is a 600,000 times difference between the average person's emissions and a billionaire's. Their private jets, their yachts, their space tourism. A private jet flight emits 14 times more carbon than the passenger on a commercial plane. And some of these billionaires commute to work every day via private jet. Billionaires don't consume just for pleasure. They accumulate assets. By inflating land and house prices, they can buy up extra farmland and entire city blocks. They strip local economies, extraction with monopolies, violently displacing indigenous and using controlled narrative as a shield of propaganda. This man has 25 bathrooms in his house. How much diarrhea does he need 25 bathrooms in his house? He even has a ballroom. And this ambition for space tourism is a luxury 100 times the carbon cost of his private jet. A Gulfstream G650 emits 7 tons of carbon in an hour. The top 1% control 50% of the world's total wealth. Individuals with over $1 million in assets actually make up only 1% of the adult population, and individuals with less than $10,000 make up 53.6% of the global population. Those with assets between 100,000 and 1 million, controlling about 40% of global wealth, equates to 11% of the population. However, what is held in offshore bank accounts is estimated to be over $7 trillion, which is about 10% of the world's GDP. This chart shows on the left the distribution of wealth, and on the right, who owns it. So you can see it, 45% of the world's total wealth is owned by this one guy. 39%, which was those millionaires I talked about. That's a little bit more spread out. You're into foot soldier territory here, ideologically compromised. And down here, the 13%, that's most of the West. And down here, 1.3, that's everybody else, bro. These figures that I'm showing you are not reflective of the entire story because we don't know what's in offshore trusts and bank accounts. But if these pirates have been looting the global south since 1606, I think it's more than 7 trillion. I will do a full deep dive on wealth hoarding and offshore trusts. Suffices to say, it is not population that is the problem. Implementing a tax of even just 5% just on multimillionaires and billionaires, just on this one guy, or 5 finger discounts, would raise $1.7 trillion. That is only taxing this block at the top of the pyramid. That is not even distracting from the rest. It is not anti-capitalism to suggest we get rid of the vermin. According to Western sources, which are underestimates, there's, let's say, 13 trillion just sitting, doing nothing for anyone. Reallocating that would provide free healthcare worldwide. It would end global hunger 42 times over. And it would provide housing for every unhoused person on the planet. From that one tiny block. Tax the fucking rich.